We'll start with some recitation of the Shakyamuni Buddha name mantra. First of all, purifying oneself and all the mother sentient beings, and then we'll do some more recitations for getting all of the realizations and inner qualities, enlightened qualities. Dayanda Om Mune Mune Maha Mune Soha Dayada 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 Om Mune Mune Maha Mune Soha. Then, with yellow light and nectar, receiving all of the inner qualities of and realizations: love, compassion, bodhicitta, wisdom, good memory, concentration, health, wealth, merit. Dayada Om Mune Mune Maha Mune Soha Dayada Om Mune Mune Maha Mune Soha Dayada Om Mune Mune Maha Mune Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamunaya Soha. 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 Tayata Om Muni Muni. Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamunaya Soha. Venerable Sarah was suggesting spending a little bit of time on the Vajrakata verse that we recite at the beginning of the teaching. Some people, many, are very familiar with it. Some people not so much. Anyway, it's good to think about. And then we know what we're meant to be meditating on when Rinpoche recites it very slowly in Tibetan at the beginning of the teachings. So that seems like a good idea. So the verse says, see all causative phenomena like a star. So the stars are there all the time, but you can't see them during the daytime. You can only see them at night time. And somehow from other In other contexts, darkness is like ignorance. They talk about the darkness of ignorance even. The darkness of ignorance in the three principal aspects of the path. Darkness of ignorance. But here it's about stars. So the stars, that's like the ultimate nature of the causative phenomena. I mean causative phenomena and everything, of course. Causative phenomena is impermanent phenomena, right? And that's, when you listen to Rinpoche talking about this one, then there's a lot of emphasis on drawing a distinction between, or looking at making a comparison between the way things appear to us, ordinary people, and the way they appear to, well, particularly the Buddhas. Buddhas, Arya beings. Buddhas and Arya beings. So, the Arya beings, when they're in their deep meditation, directly perceiving emptiness, what they call the Pavanyanja Yishi, the Arya's exalted wisdom, maybe transcendental wisdom of meditative equipoise. So then that's directly perceiving emptiness, like being able to see the stars at night time very clearly. And then the Buddhas see that at all times, that emptiness. We don't see it, so we're like looking at the stars during daytime. They're there, but we just can't see it and we're not aware. You might even think that the stars are not there during the daytime, but actually there, just can't see them. What we can see is like everything around us appearing truly existent. And those appearances are not there at night time. So even though, of course, like a Buddha can see everything at all times, the Buddha can't see true existence, because that appearance of true existence is something that happens in our minds and to our senses due to the imprints of ignorance, and the Buddha doesn't have those. The Buddha is aware of how things appear to us, but they don't appear in that way to him or her because of the imprints of their own imprints of ignorance. So that's it then. Seeing all causative phenomena like a star, which is like the reality. It's an analogy for the reality, the ultimate reality, the emptiness of those causative phenomena, which appears very clearly to the direct perception of emptiness and doesn't appear to us. Even though it's there, it doesn't appear to us. So let's spend a few minutes thinking about that then. Then see all causative phenomena like defective view. I think it says, I don't know if it says in our translation or one of the other ones that we have used over the years, something like visual aberration. And so when we're reading through this in English, Rinpoche is clearly not impressed by that translation and prefers the expression defective view. Anyway, it's to do with having something wrong with your eyes. And it's funny because although what they call it, what they call the sort of like appearance of things when you have this kind of problem with your eyesight, maybe some kind of disease, they call it hair falling, appearance of hair falling. But when they describe it, it's not so much hair falling, sort of like you're sitting there and it seems like there's sort of hair falling. It's like you look at your food and it seems like there's hair in it. A bowl of soup maybe, it looks like there's hair in it. Or you look at a clean cup and it looks like it's got hair in it. So I don't know what that would be, actually, that particular illness. Huh? Yeah, but that's not. I know what you're talking about. I've never seen hairs kind of like, see little particles, but I've never seen hairs floating around. Anyway, we can imagine it, okay? Nobody here really knows, do they? Anyway, so we can imagine it. We can imagine it. Floaters. Maybe, but it's actually the what you're talking about. The floaters. That is something that we do all experience. I guess it's a similar thing where you feel like what you're seeing is some kind of particles floating around out there, but actually it's just something in your eye. So it's a similar kind of thing. And so there's an interesting conversation about this in the middle-length Lam Rem, and I guess it would also be in the Lam Rem Chemo. And there, Lama Tsongkhapa, well, I think he's following he's explaining Chandrakirti's Madhyamakavatara that also talks about this. And so he says, just like if you've got two people, one with this particular, with this defective view, one that hasn't. So, somebody who's got something wrong with their eyes and somebody who hasn't. Which one, when one of them says there's hairs there and the other one says there's no hairs, who are you going to believe? You would believe the person whose eyes are healthy, right? So just like that, you've got us on the one hand saying there's true existence over there. You can see it. There's inherent existence. We can all see that things exist from their own side. There's that appearance of existence from its own side to all of us. Okay? That's us. And we know a little bit about us, right, and how reliable we are. On the other hand, you've got the Buddha, who's, like 3 countless great eons practicing compassion and wisdom, telling you, what you can see, I can't even see, because that's how healthy my mind is. I would say there's no true existence over there. Which one are you going to believe? That's how it's treated. So, anyway, yes. So the defective vision is an analogy for the defective view is an analogy for the mind which is sick with grasping at true existence. It has that sickness. And what it sees, the hairs that it sees and everything, that's the true existence. And like the Buddha doesn't have that sickness and doesn't see the hairs. Can see that you can see the hairs, but doesn't see the hairs. So anyway, doesn't see the hairs, doesn't see true existence. Okay. So let's reflect on that for a few minutes. And then see all causative phenomena like a butter lamp. So this is, of these 9, some people will say they're all 9, that they can be understood on the level of emptiness, and they can also be understood on the level of understanding impermanence, but some of them are certainly more helpful with emptiness, some are more helpful with impermanence. And this one, it's interesting, actually, it's a very nice one. So causative phenomena, that means things which are impermanent. They often say anything which is a product of causes and conditions is impermanent. If something is changing moment by moment, it's changing moment by moment because of being dependent on cause and conditions which themselves are impermanent and changing moment by moment. So here, in the case of a butter lamp, very much like a candlelight, but anyway, you can see you've got the container, you've got the butter or oil, whatever you're using, and then you've got the wick, and then you've got the flame. And it's very clear, you can almost see with your own eyes that flame is only going to last as long as the fuel lasts. So it's going to, even though, strictly speaking, cause and effect aren't simultaneous. You can see on one level the fuel is butter and the wick. They are the causes for the flame, and when the causes run out, the flame will stop. So it's a good analogy for understanding. In fact, it's a very good example for understanding how the things around us only last as long as the cause and conditions allow them to last. So they change in accordance with causes and conditions. But then Rinpoche also, when he was explaining this, only very briefly, one of these days, that because this is also helping you understand dependent arising. Okay, so that flame is a dependent arising. What does it depend upon? That container and the fuel that it contains. And because it's a dependent arising, it has to be empty. Empty means it existing independently. Dependent arising means it exists dependently. And these two are they're contradictory. Can't be both. As Lama Tsongkhapa says in the Middle Length Lam Rim, somebody who's walking along the road is either walking along that road alone, or they're walking along the road with somebody else. There's no other possibility. So just like that, everything, if something is dependent, it can't be independent. If something's going to be independent, not that there is anything that's independent, but if it were independent, it would have to be, it couldn't be also dependent. So if something is truly existent, that implies independent. So if it's truly existent, it would have to be independent. It couldn't be dependent. So when you discover something is dependent, you've also discovered that it's not independent, and therefore you've discovered it's empty of independent existence. So you understood that it's empty. When we talk about emptiness, that's the emptiness it's talking about. Not just like the emptiness of water in a cup, like that. Not some kind of ordinary emptiness. Okay, so we can just meditate straightforward on that in that way, but in other words, thinking, okay, so this thing, it appears truly existent, but actually it's a dependent arising, so it can't be truly existent. But the question also has to be asked, because it does sound very reasonable, and it's as if we hear all the time that you can, the best way, the easiest way to understand that everything is empty is by understanding that dependent arisings. And in fact, even Rinpoche mentioned one night something which is very useful for our meditation, if you remember it. He said, the I, Ma Chöchen, Denpa Mete, Denderi Impeshet. The I is not truly existent because it's a dependent arising. So that's like a really strong logic. That's what they call like a perfect logical reason for us establishing that the I is empty of true existence because it's a dependent arising. And it's true that something would have to be empty if it's a dependent arising, because it can't be both dependent and independent. But think about it, then it seems like you only have to realize that with impermanent phenomena, or particularly the I, that it's impermanent, that it depends upon causes and conditions, let's say, never mind about impermanent, that it's dependent upon causes and conditions, and you've already realized emptiness. And that's not right. You can definitely realize that something is dependent upon causes and conditions and still think that it exists from its own side, have that strong grasping at it existing. It's impermanent, depends upon causes and conditions, but it still exists from its own side. And in the Buddhist philosophical systems, the tenets, there are schools that believe that the I is dependent, it's dependent upon causes and conditions, it's impermanent and so on, but they still think it exists from its own side. And they hold very strongly to that idea. So that's an interesting thing to think about, actually. Because you would think, all you've got to realize is it's a dependent arising. It seems like it's a shortcut to realizing emptiness. You realize that it's a dependent arising by realizing that it depends upon cause and conditions, and you've got it. Now you know it's not independent, so you know it's empty. You're there, kind of thing. But it's not that easy. But it's still helpful. It is still helpful, because it sort of chips away at it, It can't be truly existent in the way that it appears. But still there should be something more to it than that. Anyway, so we can spend a few minutes thinking about how causative phenomena are like butter lamps. So they're impermanent, which means they're eventually going to come to an end, because they depend upon causes and conditions, which themselves come to an end eventually. Also, they must be empty of existing truly as they appear, because they're dependent arisings. then see all causative phenomena like an illusion. So in some ways, you see, an analogy should be something in your own experience that helps you to understand the point that's being illustrated. And I don't know if I've ever met anybody that ever saw an illusion. I've certainly never seen one myself. The idea is that you've got somebody who's got some kind of a spell, a bit like a mantra, that they can cast, and then they've got these sticks and pebbles and so on that they cast a spell on in the presence of the audience, and then everybody gets illusioned, and then you see all sorts of things that are not there. Not really there, but you see it like an hallucination. I mean, you hear about it. I think didn't Rinpoche actually mention the one of an illusion? Oh, yeah, he talked about mirage, but the illusion. I think he said something about somebody who had met, who was like a Tibetan minister or something, and then he'd been taken to a palace, and then the next day it wasn't there or something. No, a temple, wasn't it? It was a temple. From what? From Pari Rinpoche, is it? But Rinpoche told it? Or am I imagining that? He didn't tell it this time. Okay. In fact, Pari Rinpoche talks about a temple that was illusioned, or anyway, it was an illusion, and then it got consecrated, and then it remained. Something like that. Anyway, there's another one I heard about this man it's just stories. Still never doesn't help the fact that you haven't seen one. But there's the story of this man I can't remember the details, but anyway, he's sitting there outside his house, and his wife has brought him a cup of tea. That's what happened. And so then something happens, like there's this horse, and he goes chasing after the horse, and he ends up somewhere, and he meets somebody, he has a family, and then years later he comes back, and then there's his wife there, and he talks to her, and I guess he says something like, didn't you notice I've gone, that I'd gone? And she says, what are you talking about? Your tea's still there, and it's still hot. And it was. So nothing had happened, really. It was all an illusion. Anyway, one of the previous Ganden Chipas, Ganden throne holders, said that he thought that an equivalent analogy these days would be like television, similar kind of thing. All that's there is this, I don't know what's there. It's kind of a screen and some bits and pieces and some waves or whatever it is, and then you see things going on which aren't actually there, and you get sucked into them, and you can get angry, you can get unhappy, you can get depressed, you can get, desire arises, all sorts of things can happen, but there's actually nothing there, but you get sucked into it. So anyway, that's an analogy for things appearing truly existent. Although they're not truly existent, they never were, never will be. They appear that way. They're not merely labeled by the mind, they exist from their own side. And then based on that, anger, attachment, grasping, jealousy, and so on. Create karma, have to experience the results. So let's reflect a moment then on how causative phenomena are like illusions. See all causative phenomena like a drop of dew, whether it's on the tip of a blade of grass or wherever it might be. It's there, then it's gone so quickly. All it needs is a little sun, and it dries up, it's gone. So like that with all causative phenomena. They're there, and then they're gone. No matter how much it might seem that they're so solid and substantial. They're there, and then they're gone. See all causative phenomena like a bubble. As Rinpoche mentioned, it looks so nice, but then it's very fragile and so easily vanishes. So just like that, our life, which seems so nice, with everything familiar around us and our friends and our family, but then it comes to an end so easily. See all phenomena like a dream. In the dream, everything seems so real. You wake up, you know it didn't really happen. All you're left with is memories, and even the memories fade. So just like that, everything, all these appearances, especially the appearance of true existence, is a complete creation of our mind. It looks like it's out there in the world, but actually it's a creation of our mind, a mere creation of our mind. In fact, everything which exists is a mere creation of the mind, merely labeled by the mind. Seems so real and out there, existing from its own side. That's just like a dream. Just created by the mind. Totally empty of existing as it appears. So your compounded phenomena, like lightning. There's a flash of lightning, and for a very brief moment, you can see so much, so clearly, and then suddenly it's gone, that appearance, and it's darkness again. So just like that, everything in our lives, briefly, is there and then it's gone. It's your phenomena like clouds that are being carried across the sky so fast by strong winds. The appearances, you look up, the appearances are changing all the time. Just like that, everything, ourselves, our own bodies, our own minds, everything around us, everyone around us, changing all the time, changing so fast, changing every moment, never staying still even for a moment. Well, I think maybe talk about one or two things that came up in Rinpoche's discourses. Then it would be nice to do the long life prayer, which is, like I said, is very nice to do when Rinpoche is there, but it seems like mostly there's not really time late in the evening. But anyway, it's nice to do also like this. And then do the food blessing, and then we can go. So there was one point, seemed like a very sort of like something Rinpoche didn't really go into very much, but mentioned how our mind, which is the source of samsara and nirvana, the creator of samsara nirvana, when he was talking about the choice that we have. Right at the moment, you know, the story of our mind is very much one of the work of the klesha, the operation of the klesha, the afflictive emotions. And so he mentioned how frightening it is, how very frightening it is to have those klesha. So, yes, it's true, I think, that it seems that what's frightening in our lives might be an external enemy, the idea of an external enemy coming along and taking your country, killing you, or just, you know, coming into your house, attacking you. But like Shantideva says in the Bodhisattva, I think also maybe around this point, maybe Rinpoche mentioned during these last few days, but anyway, it's good to review, isn't it? Still good to review. If everybody in the whole world, I mean, actually, if everybody in the whole universe were to turn against you, they couldn't make you go to the lower realms. They couldn't make you take birth in the lower realms. They could all gang up on you. Every single one of them. But they couldn't make you go to the lower realms. They could kill you, but that's the most they could do. And you might think, well, if they kill me, then I'm going to go to the lower realms. But you're only going to go to the lower realms if you've got the karma. So there's nothing that they can do to make you go to the lower realms. They can't do that. But one moment of anger can do that. One moment of anger, and you say something, and you do something, even to an ordinary person, and let alone, since amongst the people around us that we think are ordinary, any of them could be bodhisattvas, then that's a moment of anger towards a bodhisattva. And basically, I mean, you know, if you're prone to anger, which, you know, I mean, some of us are, then the anger can also very easily be directed at your guru who you think is the embodiment of all enlightened beings, the source, the originator of all enlightened beings and everything holy and everything good. But they've only got to say one word wrong, and then the anger comes up. So then you've got the anger towards the guru, which is like much heavier than getting angry at all of the Buddhas, right? So, yes, so it's frightening. So we have to be afraid. We have to be afraid of that. Much more afraid of the klesha, the afflictive emotions in our own mind, than the worst enemy we can imagine out there in the world. I'll spend a couple of minutes thinking about that. So since the glaciers are so very frightening, then of course that means we have to do something about them. And Rinpoche, well, I can't remember the exact context. I think it was when he was talking about, like, how important it is to have Dharma in one's life, Dharma, happiness, and so on. But anyway, he did mention about the person who was, I think it was a story about Drom Tompa, and he sees this person, and I guess he can see what's going on with this person, so he asks, what are you doing? And then the person says, I'm practicing patience. And then so Drom Tompa says, oh, if you're practicing patience, then eat shit. And immediately he replies, oh, you eat shit. Right? I kind of relate to that. So I think, yeah, it's nice to think about, a bit more about that story. I don't know if I've heard more about that story. I think maybe the way it's been told, it always sounds a little bit like the guy was a bit kind of arrogant. What are you doing, practicing patience? But if you think of it in your own life, I mean, and you think about maybe what could have happened afterwards, if you'd been in that position, in that position. I mean, there's something that we try to do, isn't it? We try to practice patience. And in some ways it's quite frustrating, and maybe you think you're getting somewhere just because you're sitting in a nice quiet place and your mind has become quiet and it all makes sense to you. And then somebody comes along and asks you what you're doing, and I'm practicing patience. Right? It can happen like that. So yes, and so you hear about this kind of story, but then when it happens to yourself, it's really quite a revelation. And I think I think most of us, if that actually happened to us, the next thing would be, well, how amazing is that? Now I know how far I have to go, Like when somebody comes up to you and you're thinking about bodhicitta, you're listening to teachings on bodhicitta, maybe. Especially when you're listening to teachings of bodhicitta from the Holy Guru, and then somebody comes up to you and disturbs you, and it's like, I'm trying to listen, keep quiet, They need your help. You don't want to help them, you want to listen to the teachings on bodhicitta. So strange, isn't it? But anyway, yeah, that's and it's why they say that the most precious person is the enemy, particularly for practicing patience, because if you think about it, it's true that the most destructive thing for us when we're trying to develop ourselves, in this kind of like spiritual area, trying to develop inner qualities, the most destructive thing is the anger. It's the anger. There's nothing like it. And you really don't, I mean, you can read about it and you can meditate on it and it gives you some familiarity with the ideas. But it's only when somebody really says something really, like unpleasant, let's say, anyway, or does something, that's when you really get the chance, and you can use the chance or not. And of course, a lot of the time we end up not using it, then beating ourselves up over it, but that is also not the point. It's like, I don't know, it's like the direct experience. It's like you've been trying to get the direct experience. When you've got the chance of the direct experience is when somebody's being really shitty with you. So that's the person that's, really telling you so much about yourself. No wonder, it says in the 8 verses and so on, it talks about seeing such a person as being your guru, because your guru, for the most part, is so obviously helping you. You can't, even if you do get angry with them, it's different, it's different. So this, the person, ordinary person who's been really unpleasant to you, they're really teaching you something very important. They've really given you that incredible opportunity. Yeah, well, I think maybe we'll stop there. We can do the... I don't know if there were any questions. Yes?
I'll just speak really loud. Just on that topic, if you see, I've heard that if you see your teacher as a guru, as a Buddha, even if they're not a Buddha, you'll get the blessings of a Buddha. So if that's the case, if you see all sentient beings as the Buddha, or see them as your guru, if you see all sentient beings as your guru, will you get the blessings of the Buddha?
You know, in one way, okay, so if you see everybody as Buddhas, would you get the blessings of the Buddhas? That, I'm not sure, that might well be true. The thing is, though, you see, the special thing about the guru, as we normally talk about a guru, is somebody who should have certain qualities. Particularly, I mean, I've been thinking about this, and also it makes sense from what Rinpoche's been saying. Really what you need is somebody who knows a huge amount about what you want to know, and who has a good heart. So you need somebody like that, and not everybody actually is like that. So if you were to actually relate to everybody as a guru, like you relate to, let's say, Kyabzoba Rinpoche, which means, you know, like, yeah, okay, offering service and so on, that's fantastic, but, you know, they might give you think that they're enlightened beings, so their advice is enlightened advice, and so you follow it, you might end up in big trouble. That's why there's so much emphasis on checking, you know. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well. Yeah. See, that's the point. I think that's true. I think both of those is true, though. The thing is, it seems like where the meditation leads you to is you're seeing this person as a Buddha who is a Buddha. Like there's that saying, you know, you're not trying to see somebody who isn't an enlightened being as an enlightened being. You're trying to see somebody who is an enlightened being as an enlightened being. And I think that's where the direction you go to in your, you know, guru devotion practice. But there are also these, you know, like Lamrim statements that even if your guru isn't an enlightened being, you see them as an enlightened being, you get the blessings of the Buddha. Even if your guru is a Buddha, but you don't see as a Buddha, you won't get the blessings of the Buddha. So it's like you have to balance those, don't you? Don't you think? I doubt it. Yeah. Well, can you see everybody else as a Buddha if you yourself are not Buddha? Well, the thing is, it's true. I mean, like they say, you know, the only person who really knows, who can really perceive the Buddha as another Buddha, I mean, you know, in terms of like the Dharmakaya and so on. But we're talking about seeing as Buddha just in the sense of seeing as being without faults and having all qualities, training your mind in that way. So it's not really... I don't think anybody's saying that we have the ability to judge who's enlightened or not. Because if we can't judge who's a bodhisattva and who isn't, how can we judge who's enlightened or not? At the same time, we have this idea that there are incredible benefits in thinking that your guru is an enlightened being. So I think in the beginning it's like, okay, I'm not sure if this person is or not, but it's better if I see them in that way. And I think when you keep going through the meditations, especially this amazing, you know, structure that you find in the liberation, then I think that eventually it's like you come to the point where you're not thinking, you're completely convinced now, I'm not trying to, there's no doubt anymore. And I'm not trying to see somebody who isn't enlightened is enlightened. I'm trying to see an enlightened being is enlightened. But it's not, I mean, I think because they say this kind of meditation is something that you need to keep going with all the time, like on a daily basis, even though you might go through the Lamrim meditations like one by one, and then go back to the beginning, go to the end, and so on. But you always do some meditation on the guru devotion, following the guru, because it's actually very difficult. They say, seeing all sentient beings as your mother is very difficult, and seeing the guru as an enlightened being is difficult. Something you have to keep working on. But I think eventually that's where you end up. Like, I remember one time, it's quite strange how it happened, really. His Holiness had mentioned, you might have heard of this, he mentions occasionally that he has this feeling of having been present during a teaching of the Buddha, sort of some kind of memory or some kind of impression. And he also said one time he thought he might have been kind of like had one birth in Egypt in ancient times. Anyway, so I was talking about this with Gentet Chok, and I can't remember exactly how the conversation went, but it was like I'm thinking, oh, that's amazing, like His Holiness there at the time of Shakyamuni Buddha, actually in the audience. How amazing is that? And then, but it's like Gentet Chok says, you mean you still don't think that His Holiness is the Buddha? So it's like amazed that he could have been there in the audience and forgetting the fact that actually he was the one that was teaching. So I think it takes quite a lot of time to sort of like work with these meditations and training them so that it really becomes, for him it's like, for Gentet Chok, when he hears, His Holiness was in the audience, he's immediately thinking, so he was the Buddha teaching. Or maybe maybe he's thinking, oh yeah, the Buddha, of course he can remember being there. He was the one that was teaching, For me, it was like, oh yeah, that's quite amazing. It's like, it's like that. The one about the person practicing patience and then sort of like catches you off balance. What's his name? Don Tomba caught him off balance. So I found, you find sometimes you're reading about there's a book about the Lamrim lineage gurus. And I found myself again and again as I was reading through some of these stories recently, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, it must be amazing to have a guru like that. And there's like, oh, wait a minute, I do have a guru like that. But, it sort of, it catches you off guard. Okay, so maybe we'll do the long life prayer. Not only do I have a guru like that, actually that was my guru doing that. Page 325. Om Swasti, Vijaya, all-conquering goddess, whose lunar-like face changes without changing fates, the faintest cooling ray of whose mantra name allays the fiery pain of our life's final end. Rainmaker adept who brings forth life's rain, here and now grant your greatest of gifts. Victorious goddess, grant life without end. Hear our prayer, O Lama whom we revere. You who bear the name of he who peerlessly holds the living essence of the pure paradigmatic doctrine of the victors, of he alone adornment of the earth, of he a guide to sublime liberation, the sphere of peace, precious treasure of precise and subtle reasoning, golden laser light of bright unerring wisdom, clarifying without confusion the two truths amongst the multiplicity of things. Lama, remain immutably amongst us, a radiant Dharma sun, skilled in sprinkling the waters of healing, fulfilling needs, benefiting all, a laughing smile, revealing pearls of skill, humility and constancy, a deep one supremely worthy of veneration,
The moon of your Mayana mind ringed round by the fever-cooling camphor of unsullied, unsurpassed resolve, brilliantly swells to the bounds of space, unbounded seas of the happiness of now and bliss of always. Lama, remain immutably amongst us, a moon guiding our way. Your teachings are vast-spreading rivers of celestial nectars, your dialectics an invincible cutting Vajra weapon. Your writing 1,000-petaled lotuses are unfolding their glory. Lama, remain immutably amongst us, a guardian of highest knowledge. By the night of seas of spiritual masters, deities and doctrine protectors, by the power of profound dependent arising and the unvarying emptiness of all that appears, may all the hopes of our prayers with effortless ease be spontaneously fulfilled. And the offering, page 100, that should be 80 or 81.
Anyway, if you say that the Guru is Buddha and the sentient beings aren't Buddhas, which is true, even in this room, which ones are sentient beings and which ones are enlightened beings? Even in this room. I don't know the answer to that. I know of at least one person in this room who isn't enlightened, but actually at Sarah one time, I remember when I was maybe in first or second year, studying at Sarah, this monk who ended up being he was actually a doctor, a Tibetan doctor, but anyway, no, I didn't know that at the time. Went to Italy. But anyway, so he started trying to debate me so that I could prove to him that I wasn't enlightened. And none of it worked. I don't mean that I ended up feeling convinced that I was enlightened, but it is quite interesting. You can't prove to somebody even that you yourself are not enlightened. You couldn't. Because it could all be just skillful means, couldn't it? Om Ahum, Om Ahum, Om Ahum. Lama Zangye Lama Dejin Lama Gindun De Gungi Jebo Lama De Lama Namla Chebabu. May we and those around us in all future lives never be separated from the three jewels, continuously make offerings to the three jewels, and receive the inspiration of the three jewels. To the Supreme Teacher, the precious Buddha, to the Supreme Refuge, the precious Dharma, to the Supreme Guides, the precious Sangha, to the objects of refuge, I make offering. Compassionate Lord, all-knowing Guide, field of merit and ocean of qualities, Tathagata, to you I pay homage. Through purity free of attachment, through virtue free of the lower realms, uniquely ultimate, supreme, peaceful Dharma, to you I pay homage. Showing the path which frees those seeking freedom, well established in the trainings, pure among fields possessing qualities, to the Sangha I also pay homage. To the principal Buddha, homage. To the Dharma that protects, homage. To the Sangha assembly, homage. Homage always to the three. The qualities of Buddha are inconceivable. The qualities of Dharma are inconceivable. The Arya Sangha are inconceivable. Through generating faith in the inconceivable, the karmic ripening result will also be inconceivable. May we be born in a pure realm. To the precious Buddha, the peerless guide. To the precious Dharma, the peerless refuge. To the precious Sangha, the peerless liberators, we offer to the three jewels of refuge this food which has 100 flavors, which is mouth-watering and well-made. To the king and his sons we offer with faith
Through this offering may all my creators become wealthy and enjoy the food of concentration. Seeing this food as medicine, we eat it without attachment or hatred, not to become fat, not out of pride, not to look strong, only to sustain the body.